I'm Dave Mowitz, and welcome to Successful Farming. On today's program, I'm going to track the sale of Timpte trailers and dig into price trends on hopper bottoms. The shark farmer, Rob Sharkey, is back with his unique perspective on agriculture. And after these brief messages, Natalina Sents joins us with an in-depth report on rural infrastructure and what must be done to improve it. So please stay tuned.
Welcome to this infrastructure episode of the Successful Farming TV show. Our transportation and infrastructure experts will explain the system that helps your farm's products travel from gate to plate, pod to pump, and plants to pants. First, we head to Rock Island, Illinois to meet with Aaron Dunlop, the operations manager for the Mississippi River Project. As we look at Lock and Dam 15, Aaron will explain the important role this system plays in moving grain and agricultural inputs throughout the Midwest.
The reason that the Lock and Dam system is so important to agriculture and the farmers, certainly in this region and throughout the country, is approximately 70% of the commodities that come through the Lock and Dam system are agriculture related. So that includes both inputs to the system, such as fertilizers, and then ultimately the raw, commodity exports, soybeans, corn, being some of the larger commodities that are being exported out of the system. So ultimately, it all ties into the global system as far as exports, and goes out to the port. So 95% of exports that go out of the United States go through our waterway system. These are mostly typical locks here. They're 600 feet long and 110 feet wide is sort of the standard on the upper Mississippi River, which is kind of a challenge for us as well because your average tow is 1,200 feet long. So that means that each tow has to break into two segments as it locks through the lock, which then increases the time that it takes for them to lock through. So that process takes about 3 hours for each towboat. So you can imagine as they travel from each lock to lock, how much extra time that takes, and time obviously equates to money. The current site that we're at here, Lock and Dam 15, is one of the first ones constructed in the early 30s. So all of them are approaching 100 years old. They were originally designed for 50-year life. And most of them have undergone a 25-year, what they would call a major rehab, which would extend their life usually into the 1980s time frame. And then primarily since then, we've been just doing, preventative and critical maintenance to try and, keep them running.
The Navigation Ecosystem Sustainability Program was first authorized by Congress through the Water Resources Development Act in 2007. The program itself was the result of a navigation study that started during the 90s. Through that authority, there's proposals to build some 1,200-foot locks and other major navigation improvements. But the program's unique in that it also addresses ecosystem mitigations and restoration. So for money spent towards navigation improvement, there'll also be money spent towards ecosystem improvement. And but that was, like I said, authorized in 2007. It has not received construction funding since then. The Corps of Engineers did receive some money this year to relook at some of the economics related to the program, and so that will be something we'll be doing moving forward.
So we actually have a fairly substantial construction project that's going on the lower approach wall here. Over the years, the foundation on 6 monoliths of the lower wall, a couple hundred feet of the wall actually have degraded to the point where we were concerned that the wall would collapse eminently and fall into the lower approach, which then potentially could block tows from entering the lock chamber. So about a year ago, we used our in-house maintenance resources to remove the upper portion of the wall, and now we have a contract to rebuild that wall. It's about a $15 million contract. It's going to go over the next 2 winter seasons.
The maintenance needs to be done, so if it's ignored, then you're going to look at closures that last much longer. So it's kind of like a short-term pain for a long-term gain.
Even though we are running some older technology here, the future looks bright. We continue to see an improving usage of the lock system over the last several years. I think a lot of that's attributable to the economy that's happening right now. Each lock site typically annually has 30 million tons of material. That's an average amount that moves through these locks in the upper Mississippi. The total tonnages are in the hundreds of millions through the system. And that adds up to a massive amount of economic value to the nation. It is sort of a rare scenario where the government is making a wise investment with tax dollars into infrastructure that supports our whole economy.
Mike Steenhoek is the executive director of the Soy Transportation Coalition based in Ankeny, Iowa. We met with him at his office to hear about the current conditions of the road and rail system that feed our inland waterways and ports.
Our transportation system, our multimodal system, really allows farmers to be international entrepreneurs. You know, when you think about where agriculture is located, it's located in the interior part of the country, far removed from our coastline. So why should farmers be international entrepreneurs? It's because we've got this multimodal system consisting of rural roads and bridges, highways and interstates, our freight rail system, our inland waterway system, and our ports that allows what farmers produce to be cost effectively and efficiently moved to these international destinations. And so it really is integral to our success. It allows supply to connect with demand. You know, we are kind of living off the investments that we've made a long time ago. You know, the good news is that we're still the most cost-effective, reliable, supplier of ag products in the international marketplace. We far exceed our competitors in Brazil and Argentina in the ability to move agricultural products. So that's the good news. Now the bad news is the United States can increasingly be described as a spending nation, not an investing nation. There's a big difference between the two. And so we've made these investments in the past and we're still benefiting from them. We're seeing some concerns right now when you look at our rural roads and our bridges, our aging locks and dams, our ports that are not properly dredged. So we do have a lot of challenges. So it really is good news and bad news. But the good news is that we've made these investments in the past. The bad news is we haven't continued to make those investments. When you don't have that predictable, reliable funding, states and local governments, they're not able to effectively plan. So they can't be as aggressive as in replacing roads and bridges, doing effective preventative maintenance. What can often happen is when you don't have predictable funding is you know that you have a bridge that if you provided a little bit of funding today to rehabilitate it, it would be so much more cost effective to do so than actually waiting it to degrade further and having a much more expensive rehabilitation tomorrow or the next year. And so a lot of that happens when in our whole transportation infrastructure is that we could practice better stewardship. We could demonstrate that, but we don't have predictable funding. So as a result, we allow these assets, these roads and bridges to degrade further, and then finally they will collapse and we can't kick the can any further. And then it becomes an all the more expensive exercise.
The transportation system in the United States is only as strong as its weakest link. And according to the American Society of Civil Engineers, there are plenty of ways to improve the infrastructure that is so important to get agricultural goods to markets near and far. The group gave American infrastructure a D+ in their 2017 report card. To read more about infrastructure and why it's important for farmers, visit agriculture.com.
Mention the 80s to farmers and you're definitely going to get reactions. Most people in agriculture look at it as some of the worst times in agriculture. And yes, in recent memory, it definitely was. You had a bad economy, you had low prices, you had droughts, you had interest rates that were going through the roof, and farmers had to juggle all that and yet try to survive. Now what's interesting is when you talk to a younger farmer now that didn't go through the 80s, they'll say that now is the worst time in agriculture. Now 1983 in my neighborhood was one of the worst droughts we ever saw. And you pile that on top of the bad prices and the depressed economy, it was a pretty bad time. But I was only 10 years old and I didn't quite understand it. I knew something was weird because my sisters would be like whispering in the corners about how bad the farm was. Mom was like paying extra attention to my dad. But for 10-year-old Robbie, it really hit home when the TV broke down. And when I say our TV, I mean the big old wooden ones, the piece of furniture that weighed 400 pounds, had the tube coming out the back. No remote control, no cable, but hey, it was a TV. And when that broke, I simply thought we would go get a new one or go get it fixed. But Mom said, well, we just don't have the money for that right now. That's when it hit home to 10-year-old Robbie that things were not good. But they got better. The farm economy turned around. My dad made it through. The farm survived. But what about now? Things are different, or are they? What I think about is if we had the resources that we had now back in the 80s, would it be different? What if we had the social media? What if we had the group chats? What if we had the internet? The only real-time information that they had back then was the coffee shops. And when things are negative, that can be a pretty toxic environment. The last thing farmers needed in a depressed economy was that type of negative pressure just crushing down on them. One of the things that people talk about in the 80s that was so bad was what was going on with the lending. There was some things that were going on that shouldn't have been. The first time a bank pulled something that was kind of shady or underhanded, would they have been called out on social media? Would it have stopped it? But to me, one of the most disappointed things in this argument is when we talk about mental health in agriculture. Back in the 1980s, it was a stigma. It was embarrassing. You didn't talk about it. And the guys that did, they were looked down upon. You compare that to today, I'm afraid I don't see a whole lot of difference. And that's what makes me sad. I know our Canadian friends are doing a very good job. The Do More Ag Foundation is smashing through barriers. They're making it okay for farmers to admit they're depressed, that they have anxiety, that they need help. And then they're providing ways for those farmers to get help. When you're going through these tough times in agriculture, you want to focus on your farm, but sometimes you just can't because of the anxiety and the depression and the pressure to do good, the pressure to provide for your family. I know we can do a lot better. The farm economy is going to get better. Then it's going to get worse. But hopefully that next time when it gets worse, when we do the comparisons between now and the 80s, we can at least say we don't have the stigmas on mental health in agriculture like we did then. It is so much easier now for farmers to get help and not have that additional weight weighing down on their shoulders. I'm Rob Sharkey. I want to hear your thoughts on this. So go to sharkfarmer.com and shoot me an email. For more videos like this, go to agriculture.com/TV.
Join me at sale to see what late model hopper bottom trailers are selling for after these brief messages. If you are looking to upgrade trailers or expand your fleet of hopper bottoms, this 2013 Timpte would be worth considering. This is a 42-foot unit with 66-inch sidewalls, and the trailer comes complete with ag hoppers, air ride, roll tarp, and 22.5-inch aluminum rims. Now, moments ago, I did a quick inspection of this trailer and found it to be in solid condition, no cracks in the frame or the hoppers. And I asked the firm conducting today's sale, Sullivan Auctioneers, and it turns out this trailer is being sold by a farmer. Now that fact always brings with it peace of mind that the trailer was likely well cared for. But I wouldn't take that as a fact. It's crucial to always do a thorough inspection of trailers prior to them selling. Now, to get some inspection pointers, let's go talk to Luke Sullivan prior to the Timpte selling today. We're speaking with Luke Sullivan of Sullivan Auctioneers about that Timpte trailer out there. Now that is a typical farmer hopper bottom, right? It's 42 feet, 66 sidewalls, ag hoppers. It has the aluminum rims, if I'm not wrong, has a roll tarp. That's perfect to go to work, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what most farmers in this part of the world are looking for. It's going to scale correctly and haul, the maximum amount of grain that they can down the road and still be able to get in and out of the fields in a reasonable manner. That
trailer was owned by a farmer. How important is that when it comes to a sale like this? Do farmers trust what farmers have been using?
Oh, absolutely. I think farmers feel comfortable buying other items off fellow farmers. They can ask questions about how the items have been used and be able to relate to that, and also know that it hasn't been out on the road all of its life, racking up an excessive amount of miles.
Well, and that's why it's really important when you're getting into a purchase like that to really look at the trailer, What things should a farmer get answered before he shows up at the sale, for example?
Sure. So if I was doing an inspection on a trailer, of course, would want to make sure I took a good look at the frame and make sure there's no cracks or bends in the frame. And the sidewalls, make sure that they haven't been dented or gouged.
How much more would a trailer like that bring in August, let's say, just prior to plant or harvest, I mean?
Sure. Yeah, you can see some fluctuation there, maybe somewhere around 5% on a trailer like that. Really? Most guys still have some grain to haul yet this spring and throughout the summer, right. So it also gives them a time to get it home and go through it and make sure it's going to match up correctly with their truck and do any maintenance that they need to ahead of time.
Any ideas what it'll bring? Anything? You probably feel pretty confident about predicting your price.
Yeah, a trailer like that pretty consistently should be in the $24,000 to $28,000 range.
Well, thanks for that information, Luke. Let's go watch our Timpte sale.
24 by, 24 by, 24 here, 24 by, I'm on site down to 24,000, 24 by, 24 by, 24 by, not had that many miles on it, guys, from Warsaw to Hamilton, right out south of Hamilton's all the further those trailers travel. 24 by, 24 by, now $25,000, let's go, 25, 24 by, 25, now 25 by, 25 by, 25 by, 6,000, 25 by, 6,000, down, Reno quality 2, 26 here now by, 26 here now, $500, Shaver board, but again 26 by, 26 here now, $500, 26 here now by, 26,000, $500, 26,500, 26 here now, $500, 26 here now, $500, 26,500, total 26,000, 26,000.
So the final bid on that 42-foot Timpte was $26,000. That is certainly in line with recent sales of similar trailers. I found several similar Timptes that recently sold at auction for between $22,100 up to $29,500. When researching dealer prices, I found 24 similar Timptes, and their asking prices range from $22,500 up to $26,000. Now that is a very narrow price range, which indicates to me the values listed online are hard and fast. Such recent price information is crucial to have in hand before bidding. And we now offer you the opportunity to get appraisals from the authority on equipment prices, and that is Iron Solutions. Used by banks, manufacturers, and dealers from across North America, Iron Solutions gathers actual dealer sales, auction purchases, and wholesale transactions on equipment built in the past 20 years. Now, for more information about Sullivan Auction, go to their website at sullivanauctioneers.com. I'll see you again next week on another Steel Deals Report. After these brief messages, we reveal the success story of the multinational manufacturer Landoll and how a 4-H project launched that company. So please stay tuned. Our Aegis Iron feature tractor this week actually isn't the tractor which we featured before. This would be a 1959/1960 Landoll original trailer. And it's a great pleasure to be able to talk about this because this was the first thing, Don, that you built. And it acts as the foundation of what it now today, Landoll Corporation, a company that builds not only farm machinery, but a lot of other equipment that's sold around the globe, isn't it?
Correct, yeah.
So talk a little bit about this trailer. This was a 4-H project or an FFA project?
FFA, vocational ag. Mm-hmm.
And it started out with, first you built the undercarriage from salvage parts.
Built the undercarriage, you couldn't buy things, so... Anyway, bought a couple heavy-duty, the hubs were off old Hudson cars. The frames were F20. Being all the iron within the base of this trailer is used materials that, with the old German pride, welded all the holes shut and ground it down to appear that I'd bought new iron.
Oh, really? That was the appearance that was so important, right?
I couldn't afford new, and it wasn't that readily available in those days either.
So that's kind of the start of your inventing your life in invention, because you've had a long and a rich life of creating ideas and concepts. You got out of high school and you basically started working for Hanover Manufacturing, or they were making hoists?
Hanover Implement and Manufacturing.
Oh, okay. And you worked there a couple of years, right?
Yeah, about 2.5 years.
Yeah. And then came partner with a welding shop, a welding service shop in Marysville.
Correct.
And that was something that you eventually were able to take over ownership on.
Right. I had a partner for the first 3 years. Yeah. And he was 30 years older than I, and he gave me the opportunity to buy him out and go on my own.
Yeah.
You know, that old German do-it-yourself, I didn't have a desire to take partners on board, so
yeah.
I had to grow at a pace I could afford.
So in those days, you were doing mostly welding repairs then?
Welding repairs, blacksmith shop,
right.
Radiator repairs, so we were diversification, which has been a big part of our life.
Now that's what makes this trailer so historic and featured as well, is this really kind of is the metaphor for a large part of what Landoll is today, and for the fame that you have in trailers, because you build the Cadillac of trailers when it comes to hauling, especially the heavy haul trailers that we see going down the interstate or around town.
I think today we sell to about 13 different industries.
Oh, no kidding.
So, you know, they're all this basic trailer, but with their own bells and whistles on them. So we're very diversified in the companies we serve.
So Don, it all started out with a trailer, and this year, 55 years later, it's still Landoll strong, isn't it?
You're correct.
I'll see you again next week in another Aegis Iron feature. Please join us next week for another outstanding show. We reveal how to stop the #1 cause of corn losses at harvest, a misadjusted corn head. And then our engine man talks about timing chain wear in engines. I head to auction to see what a late model bat wing mower sells for, just in time for mowing duties. See you next week right here on Successful Farming. Hi, I'm Dave Mowitz. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, hit subscribe right here if you haven't already, and click that little bell right here to be notified when we post a new video. And click here to see more great episodes from Successful Farming Television.